Hey everybody! Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be talking about South Carolina. I spent a month up in South Carolina after my stay in Georgia, and we're going to go ahead and talk about how I got there, what happened while I was there, and how I left. So in the first half of this episode, because it's going to be divided in two, we're going to talk about the arrival, how I got to South Carolina, and what the city of Rock Hill was actually like. And then in the second half, in another video that I'm going to upload afterwards, we're going to talk about what the Airbnb was like and what happened while I was there, as well as how I left. When I left my sister in Georgia, my allergies exploded. Like, the pollen was turned up to 11 for some reason. Sinuses, nose, eyes, it was just a nightmare. Like, as nice as the people were, the allergies were that bad. It was really, really bad. But, like I mentioned in the last video, the highways weren't big. It was just like one-way roads or two-lane roads, each lane going one way. So there wasn't a whole lot of passing, but there didn't need to be. There wasn't a lot of traffic between Georgia and South Carolina at the time. When I did get to South Carolina, they were doing some work on the highway, which, you know, that's normal. So there was a very brief traffic jam, but it didn't last that long. Now, going on a little bit more about the highway, in some parts of the highway, they're going to have turns that go off to the side that you won't really notice that your GPS is going to want you to take, or at least mine did. And these roads were hard to see, but I would say sort of trust your GPS. Keep an open eye and make sure that that road is legit, but my GPS got me there. I just listened very carefully to what my GPS was saying, and I followed the roads, but they're not always easy to see. Harkening back to when I was meeting with my sister in like the middle of Georgia, the drive from Georgia involved going from the Savannah area to the middle of Georgia to have lunch with my sister, all the way up to the South Carolina, North Carolina border. I'm sure you've heard before that America is a big country and you can't just go all over the place and see it all at one time. And this is a good example of that, because to have lunch with my sister and then go all the way to the South Carolina, North Carolina border, it was a whole day of driving. So if you're planning on coming to the US, keep that in mind. It is a massive country. Earlier and a few times before, I mentioned how nice the Georgian people were, and I saw another example of this when I was driving along the highway and I had to stop for gas. Just this dude and his family were getting out to get gas for their four-wheelers, or maybe they're going hunting or something, but he taught his kid, or he was teaching his kid, to hold the door open for people going through, myself included. And that's not really something you see often enough in the bigger cities, because this was just a gas station off the side of the highway in nowhere, Georgia. So you do still find a lot of courtesy even in places that you may not be super familiar with in Georgia. Just something to take note of. Georgians are very courteous, and they do want you to be respectful, but they'll go out of their way to respect you. Remember earlier when I mentioned that it's a whole day of driving if you want to go from Savannah to the middle of Georgia to the South Carolina, North Carolina border? Well, I left as early as I could. I had lunch with my sister, had a lunch that was relatively on time. I still got to my next Airbnb really late, and I really, really appreciate Flavia's patience with my late arrival, because I did show up at a pretty unreasonable hour. Understandably, she had turned in for the night, but she was ready for me. She had a key ready. She showed me to my room. Very patient with me on that one, and just like with my last Airbnb host, I really appreciate it. The day after my arrival, it must have snowed at some point in the night, or maybe it rained, because the road was wet. And South Carolina, at least that part of South Carolina, has hills. It's Rock Hill, South Carolina. I know it's in the name, but it didn't register with me, and I came this close to rear-ending someone. Luckily, my car stopped just in time, but I was like, oh no. Oh, not an out-of-state accident, please. And I'm so grateful that it didn't turn out that way. But just something to be aware of in these states that have a lot of hills, be mindful that your car is probably going to move fast when you're going downhill. You need to take it easy with the speed. Something I noticed about the city of Rock Hill, it has everything that you need to get by for the month or however long you're staying. It's got grocery stores. What it has a ton of is medical offices. They got a hospital. They got private doctors of all kinds there. A lot of the reviews that I had read were medical professionals going there to work. And that's really something you're going to see a massive amount of. So if you work in the medical field, maybe Rock Hill is right for you. Now, something stupid that I did while I was in Rock Hill, I was driving around South Carolina, seeing what there was to do there. The Rock Hill or North Carolina area, just cruising. And along my drive, I really had to pee. So I pulled into a 7-Eleven after I found a place. I was like, oh, thank goodness, 7-Eleven. I pull in, and I throw my glasses in my car. They land on the driver's seat. Foreshadowing. I go in, I take a leak, feel better, come back out, and sit in my car. Do you remember where I told you I put my glasses? Yeah, I crushed my good glasses. And now, what I have to wear when I drive, I jokingly call my birth control glasses. They're big, they're bulky, but they get the job done. So while I was in Rock Hill, I was contacted by my friend and former boss, Jeff, and he says, hey, I'm going to be in Asheville for a little while, let's hang out. So I went and drove through the Appalachians to go see Jeff. We had some donuts, we joked around, we caught up a little bit. Jeff's doing his thing, and he beat cancer. So it was a lot to be happy about. But when I met the guy, he was like a lot taller than me in person. I only knew him online previous to meeting him in Asheville. But he was even cooler in person than he was online. He had all kinds of great stories. I kind of hope he starts a YouTube channel. But it was interesting to see another part of the country while I was in Rock Hill. Asheville, it's interesting. I didn't get to see too much of it, but the architecture's nice. Very hilly where I was, but driving to Asheville, I had to go through the Appalachian Mountains. I think I might have already mentioned that. And it was my first time going through the Appalachian Mountains. So the Appalachian Mountains are steep, or they are in some parts. So I'm doing like 70 because it's the highway. And then like it starts getting a little bit steep and my speed goes down to 60 and I'm like, oh, that's not good. And then it goes back and it goes down to 50 and I'm like, ooh, that's really bad. I hope there's nothing wrong with my engine out here. So, and then it plateaus and my speed goes back up and I'm like, oh man, okay. Because I had AAA, I think I still do, but I had AAA and they could have come and got me, but up in the mountains, I don't know about that. But that was interesting, and that was my first time in the Appalachians. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. I'll go more into detail about it in part 2. But that was a little bit of a preview of what's to come. One dude that I used to train with was actually up in Boone, North Carolina, and he had contacted me too, trying to hang out, but I had recently gotten a promotion and I could only do so much traveling around, but I do hope to go back to North Carolina someday to hang out with him. But yeah, I don't know how I have so many friends in different states, but that's another place I want to go is Boone, North Carolina. I haven't been there yet, but I do want to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this first half of my story about going to South Carolina. Like I said, there's going to be a lot in the second half. I hope you guys are ready for some pretty good stories. But if you like this kind of content, if you like the kind of stories I tell, go ahead and click subscribe. If you like this video, don't be afraid to click like. Don't be afraid to tell me that you like my stories. If you have something you'd like to say, maybe you've been to South Carolina, drop it in the comments. But if you want to learn English or if you want to improve your English, you can join my classes through the link in the description, www.we-speak-english.com. I can't wait to see you all again, and thanks for joining me today.